Welcome to this chat. Let's dive into some really thought-provoking territory on the origins of the Sermon on the Mount. Imagine this. Instead of being the words of a Galilean preacher in the 30s CE, what if those teachings were penned decades later in the aftermath of a catastrophic war?
Wow, that's pretty startling. So, we're saying the iconic "Blessed are the meek" might not be Jesus' prophecy at all?
Exactly. It's more like a sort of a moral blueprint crafted in the wake of disaster. According to, scholars like Richard Carrier and others like Bart Ehrman and Raymond Brown, the tone and language of the sermon reveal a community that was, reeling after the Jewish War of 66 to 73 CE.
Interesting. So, it's suggesting that what we think of as pure early teachings are actually like a post-war reinterpretation of Jewish law and morality.
Right. It's like, imagine a community trying to make sense of the ruins around them. With Jerusalem in ashes, priests scattered, this group needed to articulate a new identity. They turned to reframing their understanding of the Torah with extreme pacifism and inner righteousness as survival virtues.
I see. So the sermon becomes almost a manifesto, a sort of coping strategy, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's written in a polished Greek style rather than the rough Aramaic you'd expect from a rural preacher. That's a clear signal of composition. It's like they were, deliberately crafting language to address a crisis.
Yeah.
They also lean heavily on biblical texts like Isaiah and Psalms.
So it's not a first-hand account at all. It's more of a literary construction rooted in retrospective thinking?
Yes, indeed. Scholars like John Dominic Crossan even argue that Jesus is presented as the new Moses, like a replacement for the Mosaic system. This reframing offers a sort of replacement for the old order, almost a new law for a community bereft of its temple and past structures.
That makes sense. And, what about the earlier dating? I mean, isn't there a traditional view placing this back in the 30s?
Well, here's where it gets interesting. The traditional view holds that Jesus spoke these words on a hillside, but the internal content of the sermon, its anti-Pharisaic tone, the distancing from established synagogues, and even the specific style, matches the post-war reality, especially after the Rabbinic Council of Yavne around 85 CE, when the Pharisees were restructuring Judaism. So many scholars argue for a redaction date around 80 to 90 CE.
That's a significant shift in perspective. But then, could it be that the early church, facing exclusion from the Reformed Jewish community, intentionally reworked these teachings to serve their new identity?
Absolutely. It's all intertwined. The teachings become a sort of survival guide for a minority, a path to enduring persecution and displacement. Imagine. It's like the ecclesiastical equivalent of a post-war constitution, refining ethics, shifting from physical struggle to spiritual endurance.
Interesting analogy there. Almost like rewriting the rules of the game when the board itself has been broken.
Precisely, yeah. And check this out. The sermon's emphasis on pacifism, turning the other cheek, loving enemies, actually seems tailor-made for a community that has just seen its physical world crumbled. It's less about idealistic pre-war aspirations and more about a strategy for, surviving the new order imposed by Roman occupation.
Right. But, don't you think there's a risk of overinterpreting these rhetorical shifts? Couldn't there be another explanation for the polished Greek and structured rhetoric?
You raise a fair point. There's always room for debate, and some scholars might suggest these features simply reflect the community's evolution as it expanded into the Gentile world. However, when you combine that with the explicit hostility toward the Pharisees and the institutional separation mentioned, the post-war scenario seems particularly compelling.
So basically, the sermon is not necessarily a record of an event, but rather a crafted text aimed at providing theological solace and guidance?
Exactly. It's like a deliberate construction, an ethical manifesto written not under the bright light of a miraculous moment, but after a crushing defeat. The community wasn't just swapping out leaders, they were redefining what righteousness meant without the old support of the temple's institutions.
And that redefinition paved the way for Christianity's more urban and Gentile-leaning directions, correct?
Yes, exactly. By the time Matthew's gospel took shape, especially around that 85 to 90 CE mark, Christianity had evolved into an urban movement under the Roman regime. The poor in spirit mentioned weren't just rural peasants, they were, persecuted minorities adapting to a harsh reality without the centrality of Jerusalem or the temple structure.
So this reinterpretation, in effect, transforms notions of sacrifice and purity, from physical acts to inner ethical commitments.
Absolutely, it's like the literal transformation of sacrifice into a personal battle for inner virtue. You have heard it said, but I say unto you passages emphasize this shift from an external ritualistic framework toward internal ethics and compassion.
That actually gives a new depth to those famous passages. It's as if the text is a corrective measure for the community's grief, a way to reconcile with the fact that they lost their homeland and their institutions.
Precisely. Rather than being socialist idealism or pre-war teaching, it's more a reflection of theological survival, a way to articulate, we are still here and this is how we endure. It redefines suffering into a kind of, spiritual triumph.
And it sounds quite radical when you think about how language is used to both mourn and create a new order.
Yeah, it's like the sermon is a textual coping mechanism, a manifesto for rebuilding identity in exile. It shifts the focus from lost political hope to the sustenance of inner life, where ethics take center stage.
Yeah, that's a powerful way to view it. I find it fascinating how every element of the text, down to its Greek phrasing, serves as evidence of its later composition. But could there also be a chance that these features simply reflect a different literary style common to the period, instead of being direct evidence of a post-war origin?
That's, a valid critique. Some might argue that the use of refined Greek and structured rhetoric was just the emerging literary norms in that region. However, when you also consider the internal evidence, like the explicit references distancing the community from pre-war Judaic structures, it makes the post-war context a more convincing explanation.
I see. It's really a convergence of evidence, the historical context, the reinterpretation of tradition, and the very style of the text all pointing in that direction.
Exactly, it's a holistic reading. Each element, from ethical shifts to language ideals to the socio-political hinting, adds up to a picture of a community that was, well, fundamentally transformed by the events of its time.
Right. And, it almost turns the common perception of Jesus' words on its head. Instead of hearing a prophetic preacher, we're hearing the voice of a healed, surviving community trying to navigate a new, difficult reality.
Yes, exactly. This isn't about dismissing Jesus or his teachings. It's more about understanding the context in which these words were eventually recorded. It shows us that the text is not a simple transcript, but a crafted legacy meant to shape a people's identity.
So if we take all this into account, it means that the Sermon on the Mount is less a historical artifact from a single moment and more a dynamic, interpretative work developed over time to meet the needs of a struggling community.
Yeah, like, think of it as a survival manual written in code, a set of guidelines for finding hope and identity after losing everything. It's reflective rather than predictive, serving as a moral constitution for life in exile.
That's a really compelling narrative. It also explains why the text resonates so deeply. Its themes of inner strength and endurance speak to anyone who's faced catastrophic loss or upheaval.
Absolutely. And this perspective can open up new ways to understand early Christianity, not as a static set of events in the past, but as an ever-evolving response to historical trauma and cultural survival. It's like, the community's heart and soul encapsulated in a few memorable sayings.
I agree. And it's amazing how re-examining these texts through their historical context can offer fresh insights. Though I still think some caution is needed before completely rewriting tradition, it's undeniable that this analysis adds a richer layer of understanding.
Exactly. Healthy debate is key in scholarly circles. While some might find it unsettling to consider that our cherished passages have a post-war origin, it actually deepens our appreciation of how communities use language to find meaning amid despair.
This chat really opens up a whole new dimension to think about texts we often take for granted. It's like peeling back layers on a long-forgotten relic, and each layer tells a story of survival.
Absolutely. It reminds us that history isn't always set in stone, but is, continuously reinterpreted in light of new challenges and circumstances. Thanks for diving into this with me. It's been a thought-provoking ride.
Yeah, this has been enlightening. I guess the next time we recite, "Blessed are the meek," we'll be thinking about both ancient prophecy and modern resilience.
Exactly. It's like living through history's echo. That's all for today. Thanks for the fantastic discussion.
Thanks, everyone. Until next time, keep questioning and exploring those hidden depths.